Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated. Mitch, last 3 years as Vic has evolved, like how have you seen defenses change with how they've tried to defend him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just his physical maturation has probably evolved some of that naturally in terms of when he first got here as a 19-year-old, the smaller physical guy that could get up underneath him was a problem. And that took some of it just time of his body progressing and evolving, and then also some fundamental things to help give himself advantages in those spots. I think his shooting's improved, so that's also probably been an added dynamic that teams account for at times, whether they're trying to take away this versus that. And I think there's also probably a big element of his teammates. I think his teammates have grown with him, and the team has gotten better. And so I think a lot of times you see, with a lot of the teams that were left, at the last few months or so of these playoffs, there's something you have to give up when you take something away. That's just what happens when you play great players and really good teams. And so a lot of times those decisions aren't made in a vacuum in terms of not only the player, but then there's a ripple effect typically of what that could lead to for the team and what you may open yourself up to, and then what you're going to be a little bit more committed to knowing that's okay because we're going to take this away.
On your left in the front, Tim.
Tim Reynolds with the AP. Mitch, you've obviously embraced the notion that experience or inexperience or perception thereof doesn't matter throughout these playoffs for your team. How much do you see the symmetry in that it applies to you as well, that this is also your first time going through this in this role? Are you appreciating the fact that you're sort of proving that experience is what you make of it?
Not to get into a rabbit hole, but I do think experience matters. I just think a lot of times we use the term anticipating or expecting the use of it, not necessarily knowing how it's going to be used. So I draw upon a ton of experiences, not as a head coach in the NBA, but I've been around the game of basketball for 30-plus years. And so I just think at times there's a lot of things that we talk about every single day more than experience. When we were met as a team in October until June 1st, if we kept track of the amount of times we talked about, again, I've said this, not to be redundant, but habits, consistency, execution, fundamentals, attention to detail, style of play, brand of basketball, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've said all those words probably 100 times more than the word experience. And so I just think it's allowed us to anchor to those things when we have adversity or success or instability or different things that you go through that you can't always control. You tend to anchor to something, and I think at times experience is something that's very well suited to be anchored to if you use it in the right way as an individual or collective group. And I just think for us, it can be a negative when you use it in the right way that we can't anchor to the experience as a group. But that's assuming you're using it in its best use of the word. So not to talk in circles, but I think there are just different things that we anchor to at different times when we can't necessarily change what we can't control. And so I think that's where sometimes the narrative comes through. And yes, I do appreciate having clarity on some of those other things, and some of those things have been established here before me and helped pass down along the generations of our organization.
Jeff, here in the front.
Hey, Mitch, Jeff McDonald, San Antonio Express News. I wanted to ask you about Steph Castle. He's pretty much had to guard an all-star in every round of these playoffs, and will probably get that chance again. Just what are the characteristics that he has, both physically and his mental makeup, that make him suitable for that kind of matchup?
I don't know, other than I just keep witnessing it. I probably talk the least about him publicly. I probably talk the most about him privately, just in terms of what he does and means for our team. I'm not talking about performance because I don't want to get crucified, but in terms of output of energy, when you think about what he's doing defensively and offensively, it takes you to some really rare territory of names that you may not want to say in terms of, because you're not comparing him to that person or this person, but the output of energy in terms of what he does defensively and offensively. It's similar to Victor in the terms of he's basically in the middle of every single play, first offensively or defensively, but he's on the basketball. So, that's, some very rare air just in terms of output of energy. And then you start talking about the quality that he's doing it. I think the best way to explain Steph Castle is he had 20-plus turnovers in 2 games, and if you watch the rest of the series, you'd have no idea. And he did pretty good.
Tom.
Tom Washburn, San Antonio Express News. Mitch, how close is De'Aaron to 100% now after having a few days of rest? And how impressive was it for him to play those final 4 games against Oklahoma City and play at a pretty good level?
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, it goes actually back, Tommy, to Minnesota, right? Like he's been playing with that now for 2 series. He's had it re-aggravated at times. And his level of toughness, physically, mentally, at some stage, probably his value was just being out there, right? Like there's certain things I think that we've learned with our group that lend to our style of play and brand that, a turnover is a stat, but not making a turnover is not a stat. And so there's times when we didn't make a turnover that helped our offense. And so when Dylan got healthier and De'Aaron was able to play in that series, things flipped for us a lot of times where, maybe we made a shot or maybe we had an outcome we wanted, but there's a lot of other times where just not turning the ball over was really beneficial for us because maybe that allowed us to miss a shot and set our defense. And so obviously as the series wore on, his impact became greater in terms of production on a box score, but his impact was instant the moment that he got back into a jersey and was available for us. And I'm not sure to answer the question 100%, but it feels like it's moving in a better direction. And with rest, I'd hope he's better tomorrow than he is today and so on and so forth since our last game.
Ramona, last question here.
Hi, Mitch. I'm just curious. We all talk about Spurs culture. We've all, when I've been out to your facility, I see Pop sitting there mentoring some of the young guys. I'm curious about your relationship with him and how often you talk to him. What's that workflow like? How involved you guys are? And also parts of the culture that he established here. I don't know if you go out to dinners like they used to or you have the list of restaurants around the country or what parts of that you've kept and also which parts you've added yourself.
Yeah, my relationship with Pop, the dynamic has obviously changed by the roles that we're in now, but the relationship has stayed the same in terms of feedback, discussion, challenging each other, supporting each other, me asking him a lot of questions, him giving me a lot of wisdom. He's a pretty good resource for what I've been walking through since October and up until now. And I could not have created a better rhythm or build out of him being a constant resource for me, but then also totally giving me the freedom and runway to be able to try to roll this thing out in my own reflection as myself. And that's pretty valuable. I don't know if anyone's, to be honest, ever had that opportunity that I've had this year. And I don't take that for granted. It's not lost on to me the impact that he's had while also really empowering me to be myself. And in terms of the culture, yeah, I think, again, that's a word that can have a lot of definitions, but, he, RC, the whole family, and people that have been in our organization for a long time have just really set an environment of how one operates and interacts with each other in our building and within our program. And I think it allows people to hopefully feel valued and be themselves while also understanding how competitive and how hard we have to work to be where we want to be. And I think there's quite a few of us, Peter, John, Brian, and myself now as the leaders, along with Victor and the players that are trying to maintain and sustain that while also being okay with modernizing things as we go. So my restaurant list and wine list might not be the same as Pop's, but yeah, we're trying to connect it all and, again, just keep writing new chapters.
De'Aaron, Matt Guzman, Spurs on SI. As you kind of look back at I think Dylan was calling you Unk in here, but, just your relationship with this team from where you came from, coming to San Antonio, what were some of those, what were some of the harder moments for your time in Sacramento? How pivotal was that for your career?
I mean, I think losing is definitely like the hard part, but I think the hardest part was like, you have a good year and then you kind of expect it to get better. And then it doesn't. I think that's probably the biggest part. Usually when you hear guys who have, went to the finals or won the finals, whatever it may be, they talk about, loving getting to that point. But this is a hard thing to do once, and it's definitely a hard thing to do multiple times. So once you taste that success a little bit, I think the hardest part was not being able to get back there.
De'Aaron,
First row here on the left.
First of all, Dylan calling you Unk. I know you've said before you're no Unk, so number one, is he going to get punishment for that?
Punishment? What the fuck? Well, funny enough, I'm actually a literal uncle, yes, but I'm not an Unk in the sense of I'm old. I'm definitely not. But
And along those lines, I know you're going through this for the first time too, but as kind of the steady hand on this team, or one of the steady hands on this team, do you say anything to the guys? Do you kind of do anything different? I mean, obviously you've been on the run together, but now that you're here, just wondering if that dynamic on your end changes a little bit.
I mean, I think my big message for guys is, especially as we were going through this process, like not, right now, but as we're playing in the first round and going up, to one, obviously enjoy the moment. This is a hard thing to do. It's hard to get back to these places, but don't change anything that we're doing. There's a reason that we're in the finals. There's a reason that we won 60 games. There's a reason that we didn't lose 3 games in a row the whole year. So we don't want to get to this place and then start changing the way that we play. Like going into Game 7, a lot of times superstars think that they need to. I guess people say unload the clip. Just get all your rocks off. Whatever you want to say, whatever phrase you want to use. And going into that game, I'm like, no, do the things that we've been doing throughout the course of the year that are the reason that we're playing the defending champs, that we forced the Game 7 on their home court. We don't need to change anything. We're a good team, and we know that. So go into these games knowing that there's a reason that we're here, and continue to play the way that we play, double down on it, triple down on it, and continue to do those things.
First row here on the left.
Hi, Darren. Sami Sadik for the French media l'équipe. I had a question about Greg Popovich. We've talked about his speech post Game 3, him texting Dylan after Game 5. What personally did you learn from him during this whole playoff run, and how important is it to have a resource like that for a young team who is experiencing and discovering from the NBA Finals?
I mean, it's great. I think, not even just Pop, just the organization as a whole. It's a lot of people, walking through this building that have been there and done that. We could just have practice and Manu's there or Tim's there. We have these guys who have won multiple championships and been to the mountaintop multiple times. And you can ask them anything, Obviously, Pop's going to come in. He's going to speak his mind, whatever it may be. And like I said before, that was the first time after the game that he walked in and said something. But, he comes to shoot-arounds, practices. Y'all see him here and there. But just to have that source of information or that's always willing, even if you ask a question, he'll answer it. But sometimes he'll just walk in and let you know, or let you know what he sees. And it's not always bad, obviously, but they're able to give you those just tidbits of. It's not even something that has to be a big thing. It could be something as small as, boxing someone out on a free throw, or one extra pass that happened at this point of the game that could have changed the game. And it's just great having those type of people in your ear who they're not saying it because it makes them successful. They want to see other people be successful, and that's a great thing to have, especially throughout the course of a long year and then a long finals run.
Third row on the right.
Dan Devine, Yahoo Sports. De'Aaron, the Knicks come in on a real hot roll offensively, especially, and they've kind of won these different series playing different ways offensively. I guess as you've dug into them, what kind of challenges are they posing on the offensive end right now?
I mean, obviously, they've been, just throughout the whole year, they've been one of the better shooting teams. They've played faster throughout the playoffs. So for us, I mean, it's getting back, limiting our turnovers. And, I mean, OKC was, I think, the best team in the league as far as turning teams over. And our last 5 games, we were able to minimize those turnovers and not allow them to get out and run. But, playing a team that has a high-powered offense, you can't help them by having bad offense. So I think that's where it starts, being able to, if we miss a shot, getting back in transition and limit our live ball turnovers, that, makes it easier and helps them get into an offensive flow even faster.
First row here on the left.
Darren, Mike Finger, San Antonio Express News. You talked just about all the connections to the past that are in this building. You also know pretty well how young that locker room is and how little they remember about some things that, that you might remember. How do you think Victor, the whole group of young guys have done, you included, connecting to the past while also sort of creating something new? Because this isn't the Spurs team that won 5 championships, right? It's something different. How would you describe that kind of contrast?
I think these guys have such a level of respect for all the people that have walked through here. That every time you see them, even if you're not talking about basketball, you just feel it whenever you go say what's up to them, and they come by, and it's just, I guess it's so normal now. Whenever you've lived through that, and obviously Vic and Steph have been here for a couple years now, but like you just feel it. Like whenever I went to Kentucky, like you feel the winning of a program whenever you just step foot in the building and people just start coming around. And I think they've handled it, I don't want to say with grace, but like they've stepped into it and they want to be a part of that. So you handle it with the level of respect and with the level of responsibility, knowing that when you put this jersey on, that you have an expectation. And it's not always to win. You're not going to always win, but to go through that process of trying to get to that point. And I think it's been great. And I think that's why we've been able to do it we have 4 guys that are under 23, and I think we have like 7 guys that are under 26, and we're in a position to win a championship. And that's because of the way that they've handled this process.
Second row.
Jared Schwartz, New York Post. Just your time with Coach Brown. What sticks out about him as a person and maybe as a coach?
I think the biggest thing is just how open that he is, and that's from like an organizational standpoint. Whenever he came in, the first thing he's like, well, I want the entire organization to be in a line. From ownership to front office to coaching staff, players, medical staff, everybody on down. And whenever you have that, and I've seen it since I've been here, and I'm like, well, that's probably where he got it from, and when he's a head coach, that's why he wants to do it that way, because then there are no secrets. If a player says something, you tell your medical person, and then they tell the coach and the front office, and everybody knows exactly what's going on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what makes a team good. And obviously, there's talent and all these other things that play into that part, and a little bit of luck, a little bit of health, and all those things. But whenever you have it from a foundational standpoint, you give yourself a chance to be good year in and year out.